Have you ever wondered why the harder you try to improve yourself, the emptier you feel? What if your obsession with becoming the best version of yourself is actually the thing slowly destroying you? In the last decade, Americans have spent billions on courses, supplements, coaching programs, productivity apps, morning routine hacks, and yet we're more anxious, more burnt out, and more disconnected from ourselves than ever before. Everyone is optimizing, everyone is upgrading, but no one is resting, no one is arriving, and somehow self-improvement has quietly replaced religion, but with far more pressure and far less compassion. Here's the strange paradox. We live in a moment where hustle culture is dying, yet the obsession with self-optimization has never been stronger. We say we want balance, ease, peace, but inside many of us are terrified of slowing down. We're afraid that if we stop improving, even for a moment, we'll become irrelevant, unworthy, or left behind. And this is where the trap begins, because there's a subtle line where growth stops being empowering and starts becoming compulsion. A point where be better turns into you're not enough yet. A moment when self-improvement stops expanding your life and starts shrinking it. If you've ever felt guilty for resting, ashamed for not being productive enough, or secretly scared that you're falling behind, you're not alone, and more importantly, nothing is wrong with you. In this video, I'll reveal the psychology, the spiritual trap, and the hidden burnout behind self-improvement addiction, and how to break free without becoming lazy or apathetic. Because the real danger of self-improvement isn't failure, it's forgetting who you were before you started fixing yourself. So stay with me. This might be the first time you see the truth behind your desire to grow, and the moment you finally breathe again. Here's the strange thing about self-improvement addiction. It doesn't look dangerous. It looks productive. It looks healthy. It even looks inspiring. And that's exactly why it spreads so silently. Every year, Americans pour over $13 billion into the self-help industry. Life coaches, healing retreats, cold plunges, biohacking toys, red light therapy panels, endless stacks of supplements. It's no longer a niche. It's an optimization economy, a lifestyle, almost a religion built on the promise that you are always just one habit, one course, or one morning routine away from becoming the person you're meant to be. But beneath that shiny surface lies something far more subtle. Most people aren't addicted to growth. They're addicted to the feeling of growth. And those are two very different things. Because every time you finish a chapter of a self-help book, every time you listen to a podcast about discipline, every time you watch a motivational clip on YouTube, your brain gives you a tiny hit of dopamine, the same reward chemical behind gambling, social media addiction, and binge eating. It's not discipline, it's dopamine. That's why someone can take 10 personal development courses a year and still be the exact same person with the exact same patterns. The mind is entertained. The ego feels productive. But nothing changes because nothing uncomfortable was ever confronted. Real transformation is slow, inconvenient, and often painful. Dopamine-based improvement is fast, exciting, and endlessly consumable. And that's the trap. People who get hooked on self-improvement often fall into the same three misunderstandings. 1, they confuse activity with transformation. Journaling, reading, attending workshops, they look like growth, but only matter if something inside actually shifts. 2, they confuse consumption with change. The brain loves collecting knowledge, but knowledge isn't integration. 3, they confuse fixing themselves with knowing themselves. Trying to upgrade constantly often means you haven't paused long enough to truly understand who you are without the upgrades. Carl Jung said it best, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Meaning, when we don't want to face our real wounds, we bury ourselves in busy healing, 1,000 tiny improvements that keep us distracted from the one truth we're afraid to look at. Self-improvement addiction isn't a love for growth, it's a fear of stillness. Because when you finally stop optimizing, even for a moment, you're forced to hear the parts of yourself that no book, no coach, no routine can silence. And that brings us to the next problem, the illusion that you're never enough, no matter how much you improve. the deeper psychological trap behind the hustle to grow. Let's go there. If the first trap of self-improvement addiction is mistaking motion for transformation, the second trap is even more dangerous. Believing that no matter how much you grow, it's still not enough. And here's the mini hook nobody expects. You're not burned out, you're spiritually malnourished. Because in America, there's a cultural equation we've been fed since childhood. Productivity equals value. Performance equals identity. Achievement equals worthiness. It's capitalism woven into our nervous systems. You're taught that if you're not improving, you're decaying. If you're not producing, you're falling behind. If you're not pushing, you're failing. And so we enter what psychologists now call optimization culture, where every part of life becomes a metric to maximize. Your sleep is rated by a score. Your walk is measured by step counts. Your mornings must follow a perfect routine. Your mind must be filled with non-stop audiobooks and podcasts. Even rest has become a performance. But here's the psychological cost. When your entire self-worth is tied to performance, you become trapped in success anxiety, a constant pressure that whispers, if I stop improving, I'll stop mattering. This is where the gap versus the gain comes in, a concept that explains why you always feel behind. You measure yourself against the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. Not the gains you've actually made, and the gap never ends. It always moves. It always expands, which means the finish line for feeling enough never arrives. Take a real example. Someone who journals every morning, meditates, cold plunges, tracks macros, reads 30 books a year, and still feels worthless. Why? Because their identity is built on fixing themselves, not being themselves. They don't feel valuable, they feel almost valuable, as long as they keep improving. Here's the hidden mistake so many people make. They believe happiness comes from finally becoming the perfect version of themselves. But happiness has never come from perfection. It comes from accepting imperfection, embracing humanity, and recognizing that worthiness isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. So the mini takeaway is this: improvement is good, but being addicted to improvement is just another form of self-rejection. A quieter way of saying, I'm not enough yet. And this illusion becomes even more seductive when you add spirituality into the mix, because the ego doesn't disappear during healing, it simply evolves. Which brings us to the next trap, the spiritual ego, and how awakening can become the ultimate form of self-optimization. Let's go deeper. If optimization culture convinces you that you're never enough, spiritual culture offers a softer promise. Don't worry, you're not failing, you're healing. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to confront. Your ego doesn't die, it rebrands. As Eckhart Tolle says, the ego will use anything to strengthen itself, even spirituality. And in America, spirituality has quietly become the new productivity. Meditation is the new morning routine. Retreats are the new vacations. Healing is the new hustle. At first, it seems beautiful. You're journaling, breathing deeply, going to sound baths, repeating affirmations, attending cacao ceremonies. You feel like you're doing the work. You feel nobler, purer, more evolved. But slowly, something starts to shift. Healing becomes an identity. Boundaries become shields. Self-awareness becomes moral superiority. And spirituality becomes the new performance, just wrapped in softer language. This is the rise of what many now call toxic enlightenment culture, where people use spirituality not to open their hearts, but to avoid the discomfort of being human. Avoiding relationships because my energy is too sensitive. Cutting people off under the banner of boundaries when it's really fear. Using spiritual jargon, alignment, vibration, shadow, inner child, to avoid accountability. And of course, there's the growing American trend of the spiritual addict, people who do breath work 3 times a week, hop from psychedelic retreat to retreat, invest in every ritual, ayahuasca, microdosing, somatic workshops, yet somehow feel lonelier than ever. Because healing, when used as escape, only deepens the wound. Carl Jung warned about this long before it became a trend. When you try to remove your shadow too quickly, you only strengthen it. When you chase awakening as a badge, awakening becomes your new ego. And the spiritual ego is far more dangerous than the ordinary one, because it believes it has transcended itself, which means it can no longer see its own blindness. The biggest mistake many people make in this stage is confusing awakening with upgrading. They're not the same. Awakening isn't an upgrade of your operating system. It's recognizing you were never broken in the first place. Another mistake, confusing healing with escaping discomfort. But some discomfort is necessary. Some pain is sacred. Some fear is an invitation, not a sign that something is wrong. So here's the quiet truth beneath all the noise. Growth isn't stacking more rituals, more techniques, more layers of improvement. Growth is realizing you don't need anything extra to be whole. But even once you see through the spiritual trap, another one waits. The inability to rest, the fear of stillness. The body keeps grinding even when the mind wakes up, and that's the next illusion we need to unravel. After the spiritual ego comes another illusion, quieter but just as destructive. You start believing that slowing down is the same as falling behind. Here's the mini hook that flips everything. What if doing nothing is the skill you actually lack? Because in America, most people don't struggle with laziness. They struggle with rest guilt, that heavy, anxious feeling that shows up the moment you stop producing. You sit on the couch for 2 minutes and suddenly your mind whispers, you should be learning something. You should be optimizing something. You should be improving right now. This isn't a character flaw. It's conditioning. From school to corporate culture, we're taught that emptiness is dangerous, that silence means we're falling behind the people who are still grinding, still hustling, still upgrading themselves. So the mind stays busy, not because it loves activity, but because it fears the void, and the body responds. Modern neuroscience shows that many people are stuck in sympathetic dominance, the nervous system state of go, push, perform. When this becomes your baseline, you literally lose the ability to relax. Not because you lack willpower, but because your system no longer remembers what safety feels like. This is why so many Americans live like this, listening to podcasts while washing dishes, audiobooks during every walk, productivity videos in the background while they cook, meditation apps that turn rest into another performance task. The brain never gets silence. The soul never gets to breathe. The tragedy is that many people interpret this exhaustion as laziness, when in reality their bodies are begging them to stop. And that's where a crucial distinction emerges. Rest is not shutdown. Rest is intentional, nourishing, and healing. Shutdown is collapse, the crash that happens after months or years of pushing beyond your emotional limits. If you don't choose rest, your body will eventually choose shutdown for you. So here's the small but powerful lesson from this stage. If you can't rest, you can't grow. Because growth requires integration, and integration only happens in stillness. The solution is not another habit or optimization hack. It's building what I call unoptimized hours. Pockets of time where you do nothing productive on purpose. Sit, stare, wander, take a walk without headphones. Let life be simple again. And then there's a deeper medicine, pleasure without purpose. Doing something simply because it feels good, not because it improves you. Ironically, these moments of undirected joy are the cure for self-improvement addiction. But even once you reclaim rest, there's one last shift. The transition from constant becoming to finally being whole. And that's where everything begins to change. Let's move into the final evolution. After you confront the productivity trap, after you finally learn how to rest again, something unexpected begins to surface. A quiet, almost forgotten question. Who are you when you stop trying to become someone else? Because beneath all the journaling, the routines, the hacks, the healing, the optimizing, there is a deeper longing. Not to become perfect, not to become impressive, but simply to feel whole again. Carl Jung said that the true goal of inner development is not perfection, but wholeness. And wholeness doesn't come from adding more skills, more habits, more rituals, more improvements. Wholeness comes from finally letting go of the need to constantly prove your worth. When you zoom out, the journey of self-improvement addiction tends to follow 3 very predictable stages. 1. The fixing stage. I'm broken. Something is wrong with me. This is where people start reading self-help obsessively, taking courses, diving into healing work, trying to repair a perceived flaw. 2. The optimizing stage. I'm almost there. Just one more routine, one more habit, one more upgrade. This is the hustle in disguise phase. Productivity dressed in spiritual clothing. 3. The wholeness stage. I'm enough, and I can still grow. This is where the entire paradigm shifts. Growth stops being self-punishment and becomes self-expression. In America, more and more people are discovering this third stage almost by accident. They burn out from hustling. They burn out from healing. And eventually they collapse into a simpler life, one centered on relationships, community, creativity, nature, and stillness. Not because they gave up, but because they finally woke up. Take the story of someone who left behind the optimization hamster wheel, the intense morning routines, the never-ending self-help books, the constant need to upgrade. When they slowed down, they didn't become lazy. They became human again. They started cooking simple meals, sitting with friends without analyzing everything, making art just for fun, enjoying long walks without headphones. Life didn't shrink, it deepened. So how do you step into this stage intentionally? Practice being over becoming. Spend time daily doing nothing for your future self, only for your present one. Choose 1 to 2 areas to truly grow. Not 10, not 20. Mastery comes from focus, not optimization. Reconnect with joy, play, curiosity. These are the first casualties of self-improvement addiction and the first medicines of wholeness. Here's the real takeaway. Self-improvement is good. It can empower you, expand you, support you. But self-improvement addiction steals the very thing you're trying to improve, your soul. And once you reclaim your wholeness, your growth finally becomes effortless, natural, and alive. Not a performance, but a return home. From here, there's only one remaining question, and it will shape everything that comes next. Let's close with that. So after everything we've explored, the hustle illusion, the spiritual ego, the addiction to optimization, we arrive at a softer truth. Maybe the real transformation doesn't happen when you add more habits, more techniques, more upgrades, but when you finally stop running from yourself. Because when you pause long enough to feel your own life, without filters, without goals, without performance, something shifts. The need to become relaxes. The fear of falling behind loosens. And you start to remember the person underneath all the striving. Maybe the version of you that's been trying so hard to improve is already worthy, already whole, already enough. Here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. Do you think you're truly growing, or are you just afraid of standing still? Because stillness is where the truth begins. Stillness is where the stories you've been carrying finally reveal themselves. Stillness is where you meet the parts of yourself you've been trying to out-improve for years. And I'm curious, have you ever felt addicted to self-improvement? Not the desire to grow, but the fear of who you might be without the growth? Share your experience. Your reflection might be the thing someone else desperately needs to hear. And if this video resonated, stay with me, because this journey isn't finished. In the next video, we're going to dive into something deeply connected to everything we explored today. Why so many awakened, conscious, spiritually aware people struggle financially, and how to heal your relationship with achievement without losing your soul. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Be present with yourself. Maybe you don't need to be better today. Maybe you just need to be here.